Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bet the Edge. Thanks for watching on our NBC Sports YouTube channel or listening in podcast form. Today, it's Thursday, so it's Drew Dinsick and Vaughn Dalzell, V-Money Sports and the Well Capper, and we got a lot to cover. We're talking Final Four games of men and women's basketball, NBA Thursday night slate, plus an NFL trade went down. Stefon Diggs from the Buffalo Bills, Drew, being traded to the Houston Texans. New toy there for their quarterback, C.J. Stroud, to drive. So that's going to be exciting. You got second round pick, sixth round pick, and a fifth round pick, all from 2024 and 2025 on the way there. What's your assessments on this trade?
Well, it's hugely interesting, and really just the entire offseason for the Texans has been, we got our guy, chips on the table, let's go. And I think that's the correct move, obviously. And I think ultimately the, kind of swinging on some veterans at some pretty important positions that you can address in the draft, and their draft capital being somewhat limited with the trade for Will Anderson last year. Anyway, it all makes sense to me from a team building perspective, and they deserve to be, lauded. That said, I think, that I don't know that this materially moves my number too much for the Texans, because I already had a ton of respect for their wide receiver room. This makes them a little deeper. And if you have one kind of good all-pro season out of Diggs left, then yeah, you should be the number 2 team in, power rated in the AFC, which is maybe sounds like it's saying a lot, but you have the potentially a top 3 quarterback right now in the AFC. And I think if you put the Chiefs alone on tier 1, then the Texans absolutely belong in tier 2, if not at the top of tier 2, with the likes of the Bengals and the Ravens, and to a lesser degree now the Bills and the Jets and the Dolphins and the Chargers, and everyone else who has the quarterback position figured out. I think the maybe more interesting part of it, even beyond just people being excited about the Texans, which is which fully not throwing cold water on this. Like, if you're a Texans fan, you should be just elated with their offseason in terms of what it's telling you about their aspirations to win a championship now. But the other side of the coin of, well, what is Buffalo doing is it's rough, man. Like, the AFC East, which was, we talked about, I think at times last year, as like one of the more competitive and deepest and best divisions in football. Well, now you have the worst team in the NFL in the Patriots. You have broken teams in the Dolphins and the Bills in different ways. And you have a Jets team that's counting on, a 40-year-old guy coming off an Achilles. Like, this is all of a sudden now a pretty wide open, pretty bad division. And I think that does change sort of the calculus of win totals. It does change, division prices in the AFC East. I would still kind of hold the Bills very loosely at the top, because you would expect with Josh Allen and some investment in the draft at the wide receiver position, they'll still be very good. But that defense looks like a shell of itself. They've lost a ton of vets, ton of vet turnover now. They're going to have a first place schedule. So it looks like, to me at least, you've seen a decent power swing division wise from the AFC East being very good to now being weak, whereas the AFC South was quite weak heading into last year, now looks very deep and very good. So Texans leading the charge there, obviously. This has big time ramifications in the futures markets and the win pools, and I think ultimately expecting the Texans to continue the progression forward is very likely.
Yeah, cryptic tweets were sent out all offseason, Drew, about this, so we figured Stefon Diggs could be on the move. I mean, tweets like "ready for whatever." I can't tell you what the future holds, but I'm still being me. That's Stefon Diggs right there. Now he's a member of the Texans, and I agree with you. Texans fans should be absolutely stoked to have Diggs. He's one of the best receivers in the league, 160 targets last year. I mean, that's exactly what you want for Stroud, and I agree. I think the Texans now could be a team similar to the Bengals where they take that jump, be a serious AFC contender here, and maybe possibly represent the Super Bowl for the AFC team in a year or two. So I'm excited to see what the NFL beholds. As a Steelers fan, I thought this offseason was one of the better ones, but it continues to get interesting, Drew. So just when we want to talk about the Final Four and the NBA playoffs coming up, the NFL just keeps peeking its head around saying, Don't forget about me. I'm still the big dog on campus. But speaking of campuses, though, we got 4 of them left. We'll start with the men's tournament. And, Houston let us down against your Duke Blue Devils. So I don't know how you felt about that personally. That was probably kind of weird.
It was painful. It was painful.
Yeah. I worked another job. I worked an 8-hour shift. Got off work, turned on the game, and there was 5 minutes left. And I said, "Oh, Duke's gonna win. Duke's gonna win."
Yeah.
So it's all UConn now. We're Huskies fans. That's what I'm doing. I put in a 2-unit bet, Drew, at -105 before they played, and happy that value I got now. But let's talk about most outstanding player and then break down the brackets itself, because the value on most outstanding player is going to be what's moving the quickest now. Zach Edey is actually the favorite, even though Purdue is not the favorite to win the title. He's plus 195 odds, but you got like Tristan Newton, Donovan Clingan, Cam Spencer, Stephon Castle, all these guys for UConn, the next 4 on the list. Certainly all tempting to bet a little bit of those guys. What's your opinion?
Yeah, so comes down to, how do you want to divorce championship equity from player of the year equity, right? Same kind of conversation we have around Super Bowl MVP. And, when you have a situation like Connecticut, then there's probably value. When you have a situation like Purdue, then there's certainly not. And I make Purdue's, this is a good example. So Zach Edey has to have something like 95% of Purdue's championship equity. Like, it's very, very tough to see anyone else who's a contributor for Purdue be so outstanding in the next two games that they're going to beat Edey for that award. So Edey is definitely sort of effectively the same number as Purdue's championship odds. Problem for me is my Purdue championship number is about plus 230. And so Zach Edey at plus 195 is a big old fat pass. I think ultimately, if you're not getting a better number on Edey than you're getting on Purdue, then that's a walk away from it. Connecticut is a much more interesting conversation, because depending on who you ask, there's not consensus on, number one, who's been the most important player for them getting to this point. I think you can make equal cases for Newton, Clingan, and Spencer. And when you talk about, upside and if it's who really gets them across the finish line with wins at the Final Four level, wins at the in the championship game, I'm perfectly fine making a case for Stephon Castle. Like, he's by far and away, when you watch the game, if you're watching it with NBA eyes, you're like, okay, that guy's going to play in the association. Like, he is going to be good. He's got a lot of remember back in the days with when Florida basketball was winning titles, and they had Joakim Noah and Al Horford, but then Corey Brewer was kind of the glue guy, wing guy, who was able to do it all and could create and was kind of massively important over huge stretches. Well, Stephon Castle has kind of all those characteristics when I watch him, and I think ultimately, if he sort of steals the show in the UConn win, then having him in pocket at 20-1 is pretty cool. I'm of the 4 guys who are kind of in the mix here, I'm okay putting a line through Cam Spencer. I'm okay putting a line through Tristan Newton. I don't think those guys are more like lunch pail guys.
My guy.
He's Clingan. You think? Yeah. Clingan, I would circle at plus 340, and Castle at a smaller stake at 20-1 are the two that really stand out to me.
Yeah, no, that's the play 100%. I was going to write a column on that and put that out here on NBCSports.com, because I think he's the best player on UConn, the most impactful player, especially if they match up against Purdue in the final.
Yeah, great point.
You're talking about a 7'2" center at 280 pounds to oppose Zach Edey. That's exactly what you want. And this guy's also from Bristol, Connecticut, which is right down the road from where Connecticut plays, the UConn Huskies, both in Hartford and Storrs. So this guy is literally a UConn Husky through and through. But the one thing I do like about him, not that he's doubled in 2 of the 4 tournament games, Drew, but he's had 5 or 8 blocks in 2 of those tournament games. That right there is something you could hang your hat on too, that impacts games profoundly. And he stayed out of foul trouble in all those games with less than 27 minutes played. So this guy hasn't even played his full potential yet, because against Purdue, he's playing 30-plus minutes. So I think Clingan is the clear play here. And I think at plus 340, after they beat Alabama, we're looking at probably plus 200 or less Zach Edey odds.
Yeah, I guess we haven't talked about any Alabama. We haven't talked about any NC State, and it's because those teams are both, very low likelihood to advance. In the case that one of those teams advances, they're going to have to, again, be as huge dogs come out ahead against likely the other one of the big boys. If this is the least likely final where Alabama takes on NC State, then throw everything out, because I honestly I don't know that we're going down that road. If we do, then everything's in the trash anyway. But it is worth noting Mark Sears for Bama is a standalone guy. He's like 20-1, whereas Bama's true odds to win the title are in like the 16 to 18-1 range. So there's a little bit of meat on the bone there. And NC State, I think, is unbettable because they basically have split contributions from DJ Burns and DJ Horn. And if you can tell me who of those two guys is going to be the most impactful in the next two, huge upsets, well, then you got the crystal ball, go ahead and do whatever. But I honestly,
it would have to be Burns.
It'd have to be
he's
Burns.
The one playing. He would be playing Edey, then probably Klingon. Like he would be facing the two best centers in all of college basketball. So I mean, if you win those two games, I'd like to think that DJ Burns is the biggest reason why. But do I think that's going to happen? Not at all. I mean, I've loved this Wolfpack run. I've literally bet them outright 2 or 3 times during the tournament. But I mean, I think if you're choosing between the two, I would take Burns, and I agree 100% with Mark Sears. He'd be the guy for Alabama. But these are bets I wouldn't be putting more than $10 down on. Like, I'm not very confident at all these teams advance. I think it is going to be UConn, Purdue. And do you have that same sentiment as we transition to the game plays?
I would be sincerely surprised with anything otherwise.
Yeah. So let's talk the spreads and totals then, because there may be some bets. I already placed some bets in these games. We'll talk Wolfpack Boilermakers first. 9.5 point spread for Purdue, the smallest spread of these two games. Total sit at 145.5, the lower total game as well. Most of the money is coming on NC State to cover and win outright, as everyone would expect. They want to continue to ride this 9-0 train on NC State. But got to tell you, Drew, the only way I'm back in the Wolfpack and the way I bet them, first half team total over 31.5. I'm in on the first half. I'm out in the second half. Purdue's going to be too much for them.
Yeah. I am surprised that this market is stuck at 9.5 and hasn't gone to double digits. I think there is a very difficult thought experiment with how to rate NC State right now. Because the way they're playing in the ACC tournament and now through the NCAA tournament is substantially better than they played during the balance of the regular season. And if you kind of look at rotations and if you look at any tape, it's clear to see why the coaching staff there has made a very nice adjustment to pivot to, more of an NBA style offense, with keying on DJ Burns as, a post and elbow facilitator. And it's working phenomenally well because he's an outstanding passer. He's a big body. And so he can do it on both ends. And honestly, I don't know that there are many advantages that I see as you look at the way that even currently NC State is playing up against Purdue. You maybe would key on the one teeny glimmer of hope, which is that NC State is very secure with the ball and Purdue can't turn over anyone. So there's going to be less transition in this game. There'll be less free points for Purdue. And just in general, I think this is going to come down to good old fashioned, like getting it done in the post. And in general, depending on how aggressive the whistle is for Purdue, that's probably going to determine whether or not they cover. I think the money line price is very fair in terms of likely winning percentage, percentage here for Purdue. So I don't see any reason in getting involved with Wolfpack on the money line here. And I think ultimately the degree to which Purdue's getting a favorable whistle is going to drive whether or not they cover by 10. Where I do think there is an angle to attack is on the under 145.5 when in a game where you're going to have, pretty compelling likelihood that there's not a lot of turnovers and in general, solid 3-point defense from your two teams. I think you're going to have a lower scoring game. And I think this is going to come down to getting boards, which, by the way, NC State has been phenomenal at lately. They are really doing a good job of cleaning the glass. And so, fewer offensive rebound opportunities for Purdue, having to get it done the hard way through their half court offense. All of this to me just screams a game that's going to be in the low 140s. We're staring at a 145.5 right now. My fare on this is 141. We're staring at 146.5 right now. However, Circa, who is probably one of the kind of leading sharper places in terms of liquidity, is at 145.5. So I agree with them. I'm on the low end here. I think this is probably going to be a bit of a snoozer as far as points go. So give me an under.
Yeah, I think the second half of this game is going to be tremendously slow. I think Purdue especially has Yeah, so I think if Purdue, I mean, you want to talk about halves, Drew. You want to talk about last time we were on camera together and talk about unders in first and second halves. UConn, San Diego State, under 135.5. Oh my God.
Just made it.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, that first half, I was like, this was the dumbest bet I placed. And I placed so many dumb bets in March Madness, it feels like. But I just live bet them and I live bet them. And I was like, no way, this is going to come through an original bet that we placed. But I think it's going to be similar here where NC State's going to throw everything they got at them out here at Purdue in the first half of this game. Purdue's going to go in the second half, say this is what worked for them. This is what we're going to stop. And when we have the ball, we're going to run slow possessions here. We're going to get our defensive rebounds and eat clock. And Purdue doesn't care how much they win by, but I do believe they can win by margin this game. And the one error you noted actually was NC State's three-point defense. If they make Purdue struggle, that's where they can cover this game or keep this low scoring, which I think they could keep it low scoring, one of the two, because NC State held Marquette and your Duke Blue Devils to 9 of 51 from three in the last two games.
Really,
at
really
17%.
Yeah.
So, expecting a lower scoring game as well compared to the next game. So I'm with you on the under. I like that. I'm on NC State first half team total over. Purdue's let three of their opponents hit 32 or more so far. But after that, I'm team Purdue in the second half. So that is going to be the matchup, Purdue NC State. But I want your opinion on Alabama or UConn because I just did a show prior to this. And my man Dan Titus of Yahoo Sports said that he's taking Alabama to win, and I laughed at him. And UConn is going back to back. UConn is has been the best team in college basketball. May have been one of the best teams we've seen over the past few years, Drew. But the spread's now 12.5. I laid 11.5 with the Huskies. I took Alabama first half team total under 35.5. I think the Huskies defense will be front and center of this matchup. What say you?
Yeah, deja vu all over again, where the market is just ahead of UConn here in every way. San Diego State game, we talked about it last week. That we kind of made a case that the real angle was the under, but the side discussion was all largely focused on it. Man, every public model out there is saying this should be a 9.5 or whatever, and it's double digits, and it's getting bet in that direction even more. And this is the same sort of thing. Like, it's tough to use the math that's of the numbers that are available and come up with 12.5 being fair. So the numbers guys are going to have Alabama as the clear right side here. I personally think that I'm tired of getting run over by UConn, so I'm out of the fading UConn business.
Every game in the tournament.
They are proving that the numbers that they put up during the regular season were regular season numbers, and that they have another gear a la Chiefs, kind of deal. And it's fun to watch. It's impressive to watch, especially if you bet on them. I haven't, but yeah, it's fun. I will say this though. Alabama does have sort of the right DNA in terms of their, gung-ho shooting to make this one interesting. And I think I'm assuming that's what your friend Dan Titus was kind of getting at, which is, hey, UConn hasn't really proven that they can deal with adversity. What happens if Alabama is just shooting the lights out? Well, okay, maybe they shoot the lights out, but let's not forget, this is now a different setting. Like, this is going to be a football stadium configured for college basketball. That means sightlines are more difficult. That means just in general, the space is going to feel less compelling as far as just shots fall. That said, if I'm wrong, and if this is a soft rims and good shooting night for Alabama, we could see a 200-point game here, and I wouldn't be shocked. Like, this could be our second 200-pointer of the tournament after what was Florida, Colorado just getting over the line. But there's nothing whatsoever that I can point to about Alabama's defense that says UConn's not going to just have their way to 90 points here. And so I think with all that said, I'm going to key on team total over here for Connecticut because they're not relying on shooting. They are outstanding on the offensive glass. They don't fiddle around either. When they get an offensive rebound, that sucker goes right back up and right in. Like their possessions on offensive rebounds are incredibly short, which just in general has kind of obfuscated the fact that their tempo otherwise is a lot slower this year. So, yeah, I mean, I think realistically expecting Connecticut to get into the 90-point range is not crazy to me. And if this ends up being a good shooting battle between teams, Connecticut, by the way, it took them. It was, again, as someone who was sitting on an under, a big old fat under on that San Diego State game, like seeing them down the stretch and like watching the clock and being like, guys, we're inside 5 minutes. Let's just eat the clock here. What are we doing, guys? Like, let's just eat the clock here. And still, it was like, they were getting open shots early in the shot clock and taking those shots. So it's like, I don't really think you're necessarily going to see them pull the rug in terms of effort, even if they are winning comfortably. So give me some Connecticut team total over.
Yeah, I love that call. And, in UConn, it felt like that first half against San Diego State, like, I don't want to say it woke them up because they were already, the beast was already awake. But it kind of was like, all right, enough of this now. You're not going to score 31 points in the first half on us. Like, nobody does that. And a fun fact that 9 straight opponents in the NCAA tournament have scored 32 or fewer first half points against the UConn Huskies. And if you didn't catch the Illinois game, I mean, I had UConn's first half team total over in that game. Thought they would roll on Illinois' defense, end up being a low-scoring half. Illinois only scored 23 in the first half. And then if you didn't catch the 30-0 run that UConn went on, I mean, I was watching with a friend. He said, "Why are we still watching this game?" I said, "Bro, they're on a 24-0 run. Like, when will it end?" Literally, like, yeah, I mean, it was incredible. So I think UConn does roll in this game. I love the team total overlook as well for them. I think Alabama's going to have trouble out the gate. And I love the call, too, on the neutral court on the football field type deal because Alabama relies on their three-pointers. And if they get a little rusty out the gate, I mean, UConn's just going to roll right over them. And that 12.5 is going to look like a steal. So go Huskies. We're now a Husky show. Let's go to the women's bracket because we could still be a Huskies one, or we could be a Wolfpack supporter because we got 2 of the same teams here on this side of the women's bracket as well, Drew. We'll start with the Wolfpack. NC State women taking on South Carolina women. The Gamecocks are 11.5-point favorites, total at 139.5. South Carolina been a very great fourth quarter team. The first half, third quarter, they've let a few teams hang around this tournament, but the fourth quarter, as you said, like the UConn men, they've had another gear that they've kicked on and taken away.
Yeah. And honestly, between the North Carolina State men and women's programs, I think we would be impressed, but not shocked if the men get it done against Purdue. I would be blown out of the water if the women get it done against South Carolina. Like South Carolina is an absolute machine. And they have had some wobbles. You look across the later portion of the season, and they left Indiana in the game for way too long, but Indiana was better than their ranking. They almost lost to Tennessee in the SEC title run. They took apart LSU, who we now know to be was quite a formidable opponent in the SEC championship game, and I think there is always something in the back of my mind when a team is undefeated. Which is, when the going gets tough, is the pressure going to be, impactful in a negative way? And I think South Carolina may have to answer some of those questions in this game, particularly in the early stages. But to me, they look like a perfectly complete team in every way. And I would be sincerely surprised if this is any type of a competitive contest. I'm not interested in laying 11.5 necessarily, but I surely can't make a case for the dog. What about you?
Yeah, I was going to say South Carolina spreads have been pretty sharp in the tournament overall. I will say that because I have been betting a little women's tournament as well. Mainly been a supporter of the Iowa Hawkeyes, which we'll talk about next. But I do think South Carolina's live betting options will be really good here because, like I said, NC State could hang around here for the first or second quarter. A reminder that the women's games are first, second, third, fourth quarter, 10-minute quarters. So not the same if you're betting the first half, things like that too. I think the under could be worth a look. I think South Carolina would grind them out in this game if they can, but nothing too confident because, like I said, I think you can get a 6 or 7 here from what I've been seeing for South Carolina. They let Indiana sneak back in the game, and they hit a big shot late to go up and win that game. And Oregon State was in that game for, I would probably say, 22 to 25 minutes before South Carolina snapped their fingers and went on a run. So, and as you said, the going might get tough here, but I think the next game would be the one where we're going to see South Carolina really struggle. But they're searching to be the first team since 2016, the UConn Huskies, to win a national championship with a perfect record. Very hard to do, but certainly think they're championship bound because the committee did a very good job, Drew. When they gave South Carolina this draw, but they also gave Iowa the draw. They have to go through LSU to beat them after last season and now have to face potentially South Carolina, who also didn't win last season after they were the number one team. So a lot of great storylines here. UConn tries to take down Iowa. The Hawkeyes are 2.5-point favorite. Total sitting at 162.5, which is very tempting to take the over considering how Iowa and LSU started out. But loving everything we're seeing from the Hawkeyes lately, so I'll be taking them on the money line. What say you?
Oh, we go head to head then.
I have, if you don't remember, head to head. Okay, we will do this. 1 second. I will say this: if I mentioned last week to you, it wasn't a very big bet, but a $25 bet to win $700 on UConn men's and Iowa women. And I'm feeling pretty good about it now as we inch closer. But obviously, this is a big game with UConn women, who are down 5 players on the whole year and still in the Final Four.
So the case for Connecticut is pretty straightforward. Price.
Okay.
There is very, very, very narrow margin between these teams in basically every way you can come up with a fair. I would make this game a pick'em. You're getting plus 125 for Connecticut. I don't mind taking that price if I had to have a bet. In terms of breaking down the actual matchup, there's some people that I trust with my money who have originating models for WNBA. They're more excited about Paige Buckets compared to Caitlin Clark as far as the ultimate impact on the WNBA. And I don't know if ultimately that manifests here as Paige is kind of much closer to a kind of a serious injury, and Caitlin Clark is kind of in legacy statement mode. And I think there's definitely intangibles and X factors that make you want to get involved with Iowa here, and particularly if you've been along the ride with them as you have, then I'm not going to stop anyone. But I will just say that the margin between Iowa and Connecticut at a team level is virtually nil. And so this is going to come down to kind of late game shot making, and just in general, I think Iowa keeping their cool when they may not have control of this game the way that they did with LSU. I think that if I was to make a narrative intangible argument against Iowa, the fact that they got revenge for last year's championship loss last round doesn't feel great, that you're going to have that exact same effort coming out in this game. And I think there are some lessons learned, particularly from that second quarter, of what LSU was able to do against Iowa, which are going to be pretty instructive for the inside-out game that UConn is capable of producing. So it's going to be probably, I would say, a more... I don't know if it'll be more entertaining than LSU Iowa, but I think it's going to be closer. It could be slower. I think the total is probably inflated on the back of what you saw against LSU.
Yeah.
This is going to be a different setting. I honestly, I don't see, a real strong reason to bet either of these teams. But if I had to take one, give me the plus money.
Yeah, I like your call too on the under, because it almost seems like it's too easy to take the over here, and everyone that watched the last game will just assume that this is going to be another high-scoring game. But UConn, as mentioned, have been down a whole lot of players this season, continued in the tournament as well. But Paige Buckets, a beast, 28, 9, and 5 in the tournament. She missed last season's tournament with an ACL injury, so she's obviously out on a mission herself. And while UConn's had 3 close games in their last 3, they've won by 7 or 8. Pulled away in the fourth, made big shots, made their free throws. And that's the mark of a great team. So, while I like Iowa here, I won't talk anyone off of UConn either, because this team keeps defying the odds every year. And they also have the best coach, which also means something this late in the season, Drew. So that's also a nice thing to have on your side here with the Huskies. So we'll go head-to-head here. I'm going to sprinkle the under as well. I think that's a sharp angle, and an angle that less people will be on. But in case you guys forgot, or you don't even know about it, you can cap off the Premier League Fan Fest. It's in Nashville this weekend by watching a thriller matchup on Sunday. as Mo Salah and Liverpool look to stay atop the standings as they take on Manchester United. Kick is set for 10:30 a.m. Eastern only on NBC and Peacock. And before that, on Thursday tonight, you can watch the NBA. There's a lot of good games on, Drew, but there's only 5 games, so I shouldn't say a lot of good games. But I do pull for the Dallas Mavericks to beat and cover the Atlanta Hawks, and hope the Clippers look somewhat decent against the Nuggets as they've been lackluster over their last 10 games. What are your best bets for the NBA night?
Yeah, this is a tough one. The Clippers Nuggets is the headliner, certainly. And I don't have much faith left in the Clippers. They pulled the rug on me yesterday with Kawhi Leonard being a surprise scratch, and then pulled the rug on the entire effort in the game, giving the Kings just a walkover effectively in the second half of that one. That was a really, really lousy effort from the Clippers. And I don't know, they seem like they are kind of in a mindset where they're very much just ready for the playoffs. And I don't like backing teams like that, even if they're up against the Nuggets team that I don't think is going to be at full strength. Remains to be seen whether we have Jamal Murray available in this one. That's the key name to follow. The 1 seed is there for the taking for Denver, with Oklahoma City scuffling, losing that game to Philadelphia, and then not playing their 2 key players tonight against Boston is going to be. It's like, okay, I guess you just want the 3, fine, you got it, and that opened the door pretty wide open for Denver. If they want to play Jokic and Murray through injury, then they can do it. And they can win this game against the Clippers on the road. And this pretty much seals it for them, because there's not many more games left on the schedule for Denver that spook you in terms of surprise loss. So this is kind of the one. And I would expect they come out full strength and they probably get the win in the cover. I'm with you cheering for Dallas in general, and very much hoping that they can hold off a Pels team. But the rest of the Thursday night slate is, I don't know. It's none of it's really screaming meaningful basketball. In fact, even the Dallas Atlanta game is not screaming meaningful basketball. And so I think you're probably going to get some overs here. If you've been paying attention to, I guess Miami Sixers is the exception. I guess that one,
that's probably the one under
trying to stay out of the plan. The idea of the Sixers catching Miami, I think, is pretty unlikely. So that one may have a bit of an exhibition vibe. Would it surprise you to know, Vaughn, last year in April, overs hit 40%. 60% against the spread, going over by about 4.5 points. They are trending in that same direction so far this season in April. And in general, April has turned into if this game doesn't matter, then we're not really going to play defense type of mindset. And we are on the heels of just a hellacious understretch where, there was a couple of adjustments to the way the rest were calling the games. The market took forever to react to it. And so there's probably some blind angles where if you have one or both teams that are just giving you a question mark effort, the game is probably going to be a few points underpriced on the total. So I would look out for some overs, and I would particularly pay attention to the Denver Nuggets injury report once that hits the wire. My guess is that Jamal Murray goes. My guess is that Jokic goes, and that they take this game very seriously, while the Clippers are a huge question mark.
Yeah, that's what the feeling probably will be like here. But I like a lot of the takes that you did make, especially with the over and the trend in April. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And that's an easy way, too, just to get your bankroll up to if you want to throw smaller amounts on the overs and play those and ride that trend, too. Because even if it doesn't hit 60%, as long as it's above 55, 56%, you're going to be returning something at minus 110. And with a nice cover margin, too, over 4 points there. But I will say, one team that may be a little tempting as well is Golden State. Houston, obviously on a 3-game losing streak after their great winning streak. Seems like now the tides have turned and they're definitely out of the playoff and play-in picture. Golden State and the Los Angeles Lakers solidifying themselves in that conversation. So that is one team I would be looking at fading as well. And that's a game that probably would have feels of an over potentially if Golden State gets out to a large lead. So best bets from the show, Drew. What do you like? We got men's basketball, women's basketball, NBA. You could even go Houston Texans future if you'd like.
I'm going to prey on one of the worst defenses to get to this stage of the tournament, which is the Alabama Crimson Tide. And we are going to go UConn team total over anything in the 85, 86.5 range. If that's what you're seeing, I think is bettable to the over.
Love that. Yeah, I will be telling you on that one. Hope you're telling me on Donovan Klinging, plus 340 odds for most outstanding player. We're going to take that now that we got the Huskies in our pocket. We're going to secure the back-to-back championships here, and we will never speak of the Houston Cougars once again. But don't forget to check out NBCSports.com. Just kidding. We'll talk about them again. But talk about NBCSports.com if you need any fantasy or betting advice. And don't forget, we are on Amazon Music as well for all our NBC Sports shows. So for the Well Capper, for V-Money Sports, for Dan Behind, for producing the show, we appreciate you guys for watching and listening. Best of luck. Enjoy the Final Four, and enjoy the rest of April.